none, those in favor? Okay, I need a motion to accept the final report from Eason Investigation Services regarding thefts of over $600,000 from the City of Demorest.
I make that motion.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 years ago, this city learned that we were the victim of a substantial crime, a substantial theft. Only through our diligence did we find out how substantial that theft was. The city has vigorously pursued every avenue at our disposal to determine the person or persons responsible for these thefts. And this report that I'm about to read concludes the city's involvement in this matter. We are the victim of a crime, and nowhere else in this country is the victim of a crime required to pay to investigate a crime perpetuated against the victim. But we did, out of sheer commitment to our constituents and a sheer obligation to seek the answer to the thefts. We have pursued it with dogged persistence. This report that I'm about to read is not necessarily the opinion of the mayor or council, but is the official report of the investigation conducted by Eason Investigation Services. And so if you'll bear with me, I will read the report to you. City of Demorest Investigation Summation by Eason Investigation Services Incorporated. In October of 2014, Eason Investigative Services was contracted by the Mayor and City Council of Demorest to work with the City Attorney, Mr. Joey Homans, to conduct an internal investigation into missing water money from the City of Demorest. The directions from the City were to conduct an internal investigation to try to obtain information for a civil action, employment action, or criminal prosecution for the person or persons responsible for the theft of these funds. The investigation also sought to eliminate city employees from suspicion if possible, and to address the many rumors and misconceptions surrounding the missing water funds. During the course of our investigation, we prepared a management report for the City of Demorest regarding the operational practices of the city's handling of funds. The City of Demorest discovered in 2013 that it had been a victim of a theft of over $200,000. The City of Demorest Police Department requested the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to conduct an investigation into the missing money. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation interviewed city employees and conducted polygraphs of several employees and officials. Following these interviews, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation determined that a forensic audit was needed to track funds. The City of Demorest paid for an audit by a firm that was recommended by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. The information from the forensic auditors did not result in any significant information that identified a suspect. The lack of a City of Demorest management response to their own annual audits and the failure to follow the recommendations of the audits, as well as poor business practices, contributed to the loss of funds. The current City Council and Mayor subsequently contracted with Eason Investigative Services for an internal investigation in the matter. This report is prepared for presentation to law enforcement and prosecutorial agencies to assist in understanding the circumstances of the thefts of the city water revenues collected and stolen from 2009 until 2013. The victim of a crime does not have the responsibility to solve it, but to report the incident to law enforcement and to implement safeguards to prevent or reduce the probability of subsequent losses. The City of Demorest directed this report to be provided to the prosecuting authority as well as the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. The current City Council and Mayor of the City of Demorest implemented new business practices and procedures and made personnel changes to deal with the deficiencies identified with the financial practices of the City of Demorest. These poor practices enabled persons with knowledge of these practices and having access to the facility to steal over $600,000 from the City of Demorest over a period of almost 5 years. Rumors have circulated that were seen as possible explanations of the missing funds, including software or computer errors and the possible theft of Water Department revenue funds by inmates who clean the City Hall each day. Missing funds were the result of, rumor of missing funds as a result of computer software issues. These claims were addressed with the software provider as well as the source of this speculation. Upon reviewing the facts of the numerous thefts over a 4-year period of time, this was ruled out by the determination that hundreds and possibly thousands of computer one-sided entries would have had to have been made to make this a possibility. As to the theft of inmate funds, our investigation determined that there was no evidence to support the allegation of inmate thefts. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Corrections eliminated this possibility through their investigative efforts. The initial investigation by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation and the City of Demorest contracted forensic auditors seemed to focus on the uncashed and missing payroll checks by an employee and focused on her as a principal suspect in their investigation. We determined through our interviews that the city employees routinely utilized the cash collected at the water department as a source for cashing checks and making short-term cash loans. The checks that were suspected as having not been deposited or cashed at a bank were most likely cashed with cash collected at the water department and stolen with the currency taken from the water revenue funds, as these checks were placed with the cash to balance that particular batch of funds. During the course of the investigation, we met with the auditors who discovered the missing funds. They provided us with documentation concerning how and when the discovery was made and how it had been reported to city management. The auditors had reported for several years to the city through their audit reports and the poor cash handling procedures utilized by the city, as well as the lack of coordination between the two software programs used for the general ledger accounting, water billing, and collections. The scope of the audit did not include a comparison of the monies collected in the billing software for the water department in the general ledger deposit. The auditor discovered through normal review of the bank accounts for the City of Demorest that several payroll checks of one employee had not cleared the bank during 2012, and that monies were missing. This exemplified the earlier report to management that no correlation exists between the two software, no correlation between these two software packages existed. When the original city auditors determined that in the year 2012 there were missing funds in excess of $200,000, there was speculation that this was a one-sided computer entry. This was thought to be an explanation of the missing water money by both the City of Demorest management and city employees. Subsequently, the new auditors determined that the loss of city water funds occurred in 2009 and continued until around the time the auditor determined that the funds were missing in 2013. The total of identified missing funds is approximately $600,000. Both of the auditors, the original auditors as well as the current auditors, made recommendations to the city that daily deposits be made, as well as installing a software application that linked the two programs. Note, this has routinely been suggested and directed by the auditors for several years prior to the discovery of the missing funds in 2013. Examples of these are attached to this report. Interviews with the City of Demorest employees who handled the cash and other payments taken in for the city water bill payments revealed that there were no safeguards in the handling of this revenue. This was a business practice that had not changed during the tenure of the staff at the City of Demorest. Employees described having to request the city manager to make a deposit because they could stuff no more money into the filing cabinet drawer where it was maintained. Deposits would sometimes exceed $100,000 at a time, and much of this was in cash. The auditor made a random check of the cash drawer and found over $9,000 in cash on one day following the discovery of missing money. The management report provided to the city by Eason Investigative Services is attached to this report as well. Eason Investigative Services has conducted interviews with the City of Demorest employees, including City Hall staff and management, department heads of the city, and city employees who were required to frequent City Hall on a regular basis. Current City of Demorest council members and some former council members have been interviewed and asked about their involvement, access, and activities in and around Demorest City Hall. Full-time, part-time, and former police officers for the City of Demorest have been interviewed about their observations while on duty patrolling the City of Demorest during periods of time the City Hall was closed, as well as their own visits to the City Hall. The auditing firm that discovered the initial loss, as well as the current firm that uncovered the subsequent losses, were interviewed. The software providers for the billing software and general ledger software, as well as the City of Demorest IT serviceman and the former City of Demorest bookkeeper, have also been interviewed. Eason Investigative Services met with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation agent assigned to the case and other GBI agents and talked with the polygraph examiner. We met with the district attorney of the Mountain Judicial Circuit, his investigators, and the chief assistant and discussed the investigation with them. We talked with the Federal Bureau of Investigation office in Gainesville, which covers the Habersham County area. We also examined bank records, financial reports, and other documents prepared by the auditors and forensic auditor regarding this investigation. The lack of written procedures and the lack of a method to securely maintain and track cash and other financial documents presented an open invitation to anyone familiar with these lax procedures to take cash from the City of Demorest. During the course of our interviews, we determined that there were many who had unfounded and false rumors and false perceptions of how and who had access to City Hall and the funds. We believe that we have been able to eliminate the possibility of either computer error or external thefts due to the large number of thefts that have occurred over such a prolonged period of time. Demorest City employees who routinely handle cash have been interviewed and polygraphs were performed by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. The opportunity for access to the funds was easy for anyone who was familiar with the process used by the staff to handle and store the cash and other financial documents. The storage of the funds in a locked file cabinet drawer with no inventory of what funds were stored and the irregular retrieval of the funds for preparation for deposit provided an easy target for an informed thief. Access to the funds location in the building was limited during the day during the presence of 3 to 4 employees during business hours. The investigation determined that after hours access is the most likely time of theft. Key control to the building was lackadaisical and erratic by management. Keys were provided to various city council members and the former mayor, who all had legitimate reasons to enter the building after hours to retrieve mail from their city mailboxes and to complete required documents, such as the financial council member who was required to co-sign checks for official city purchases. No log of keys was maintained. The city council members denied frequent access to City Hall, and several of them were not serving in office when the thefts began. Some left office and the thefts continued. The former mayor was seen in the Demorest City Hall numerous times after hours by many people. The city manager and the former mayor were both aware of the problem of no correlation between the billing software and the general ledger software through the audit reports and conversations with the bookkeeper. The city manager was the person responsible for making the decision of when to take the money from the locked drawer and make a bank deposit. She was also responsible for the preparation of the bank deposits and making arrangements to transport the deposits to the bank. Numerous employees from various departments were directed to carry deposits for her on some occasions. Water bill payment stubs from some stolen batches were placed in the box in which non-stolen batches were stored, which indicates a very strong knowledge of the process that the city used to deal with a disputed payment, as staff had to go back through these stubs to verify that a payment had been made. If the stolen batch receipts had been taken with the currency stolen, the theft may have been noticed sooner. During the course of the internal investigation, it was determined that many people had access to City Hall where the funds were stored in a locked file cabinet drawer in the front office. All of these employees and elected officials also had legitimate reasons to enter City Hall at any time, including nights and weekends. Additionally, many of these people, based on their position with the City of Demorest, could have or should have had knowledge of how the financial processes of the City of Demorest worked regarding the handling of the funds of the water department. However, the responsibility to ensure that a system was in place to properly collect, secure, and ultimately deposit tens of thousands of dollars in water revenue rested with the former Mayor Malcom Hunnicutt and the former City Manager Juanita Crumley. The failure to implement safeguards recommended by the city auditors and their bookkeeper and their apparent disregard for their fiduciary responsibility contributed to an atmosphere ripe for theft and corruption. During an interview with the GBI, the former mayor, who was in office, Malcom Hunnicutt, who was in office for about 3 decades, stated he was not aware of the procedures that the City of Demorest used to collect water revenue. Of the city officials interviewed by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, he was the only one who declined to take a polygraph. That concludes the written report from Eason Investigative Services. I'll be happy to take any questions from the citizens that are here. Yes, ma'am.
Is the investigation over, or is just our involvement in it?
Our involvement in the investigation is now complete.
So someone is going to pursue?
These will be presented, this investigation and all information regarding this investigation over the course of the last 2 years will be handed over to the district attorney and to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
So we are to assume that they are going to pursue some sort of indictment, arrest, I don't know what the terms are.
The choice of whether or not to indict or arrest lies solely with the prosecutorial arm of the government. We have no influence and have no ability to force any prosecution or arrest in this matter. It lies solely with those who are charged with carrying out those duties.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Is there enough evidence to indict someone?
I'm not a district attorney, and I'm not sure whether there is actual enough evidence or not. That will have to be determined by the district attorney and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation as we move forward. I would hope that there is enough information that would warrant the calling of a special grand jury to hear the evidence that has been collected. Again, this city is the victim of a crime. Our residents are the victims. And again, nowhere else have I ever seen that a victim had to pay substantial amounts of money in order to investigate the crime that's perpetrated against the victim. Yes, ma'am.
What about, you mentioned the FBI. Is the FBI going to be involved in any of the, as far as the investigation is concerned?
The FBI has been contacted. It's my understanding that the FBI agent has cleared through the U.S. Department of Justice their ability to participate should the Georgia Bureau of Investigation decide not to proceed.
Is there a timeline on as far as the investigation is concerned?
I know of no timelines that have been set, nor do I know of any discussions of the timeline. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not certain, but does the city have insurance against fraud of this nature?
We do have insurance. There has been an ongoing insurance investigation and an insurance investigator that was here last week. She conducted her own interviews. We are very hopeful, given those interviews, that the city is going to see some resolution for the insurance, the fraud insurance that we did have. That the amount that will come back to the city remains to be determined at this time.
I just wondered if it depended upon some sort of action on the part of the prosecuting official.
No, it does not, and I think one of the
that was my question.
Yeah, and one of the things that bode very well for the city was the fact that the city has pushed as hard as we have pushed.
Absolutely.
With dogged persistence to get to the bottom of this issue. We can carry this ball down the field no further. We have taken it to the 1 yard line. We need someone else to pick that ball up and carry it across the goal line. Sir.
What do you see as the best possible outcome and the worst possible outcome?
The best possible outcome would be the convening of a special call grand jury and subsequent indictments of individuals, a person or persons involved in the crime, and receiving the amount of money back from the insurance policy that we had would be the best outcome. The absolute worst outcome, in my opinion, would be that nothing else would happen from this matter, and that we will have spent 2 years of time, effort, and energy pursuing something that is not going to be pursued further. Other questions? Ladies and gentlemen, go ahead.
Do you happen to know if the financial records of the people in question were examined?
I do not know whether or not the personal financial records of the individuals named in this particular report have been examined. It would fall outside the scope of mayor and council to understand where they are in the criminal investigation. I do understand that the GBI is considering this an open case. It has not been closed, and it is my hope that once they read this, they will pursue it much more vigorously.
When will they get it?
Mr. Homans, when will they get this? When will they receive it? We had to approve this report tonight, so I'm going to assume that
as soon as we can get it to them.
As soon as we can get it to them, hopefully tomorrow.
Well, we thank you for your determination,
And
and
diligence.
wanting to get the truth. We appreciate it.
Thank you, all of you.
Council, do y'all have anything y'all like to add? Mr. Holmes?
No, thank you.
Mr. Lindsay? I want to thank, yes, sir.
I think we ought to give a thanks to Mrs. Wyckoff, because without her, we would not have known anything.
I want to thank each one of you and all of the residents of the city of Demorest for your patience. I think that anyone who has dealt with me particularly on this issue for the last 2 years will tell you that my patience has been thin. My words at times have been sharp regarding this matter because of my dead level determination that we were going to get this done. And again, I am very pleased with this council that we have pushed as hard as we have pushed. Yes, it's cost us some money, but at the end of the day, some wise man once told me, right ain't always easy, but right is always right. At that, I'll take a motion if there are any further comments. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor? We consider ourselves adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming.